Today I'm making Rindswurst, a German all-beef sausage. My name's Greg. Welcome to my channel, the Gourmet Woodsman. Rindswurst is a very mildly spiced, lightly smoked, and gently poached sausage. It's made either as a very finely textured sausage or an emulsified sausage. Let's get started. Rindswurst is an all-beef sausage. So what I have here is just some beef trim. Got some with some connective tissue, a bit of fat. This is actually not as fatty as I'd like it. Rindswurst is usually a little fattier than a typical sausage, closer to 35, even up to 40% fat. And that's going to be a beef fat because it's an all beef sausage. So I'm just cutting this into pieces that are going to fit into my grinder. I'm cutting them even a little smaller, just so that they'll firm up quicker in my freezer before I grind it. Okay, like I said, this is a little leaner than I'd like, so I'll be adding some fat. This is just some fat from a brisket that I saved for an occasion just like this one. So I'm going to get it ready for grinder as well. And I'll just stick this in the freezer to firm up a little before I grind it. Spices for this Rindswurst are pretty basic. I'm going to start with some salt. Next, I'm going to go in with some cure number 1. Really, just a little bit goes a long way. It's a pretty basic spice profile with some black pepper and some paprika. And I'm using a smoked paprika just because it's a smoked sausage, so might as well get a little extra smoke flavor in there. And that's really it. Gonna grind an onion into the mix, so that'll be one more flavor, but really this is the flavor profile. Let's go check on that meat. It's probably about ready. So the beef for my Rindswurst here is partially frozen. It's 29 degrees. You can see I've had my grinder parts in the freezer. That's just going to help everything stay nice and cold while it gets ground. I'm just going to start out with my 7mm die, but I am going to move it down to my 4.5. Switched over to my 4.5mm die. This is the smallest one I have. If you have a 3mm or even a 2mm, that would be awesome. I'm going to do the best I can with what I have. You can see right here that the fat in the meat is very clearly defined. More times I grind it, the less defined that's going to be, the more it will turn into one. Won't turn into one completely homogeneous mass like a emulsified sausage would, but you'll see it'll become more one every time I grind it. Get a nice close-up look. You can see there's still little bits of fat you can see in here, but it's really coming together into being more of a homogeneous thing going on. Still feeling pretty cold. Let's check the temperature real quick. Still 30 degrees, so warmed up a little bit going through that twice, but not a whole lot. Send it through again. This time I'm going to run a little onion through at the very end. That's not only going to help push out the last bits, but it's also going to add to the flavor. Now I'm going to send this onion through. Now when we look, we still have defined strands of meat because it's still really cold, but you can't really see too much pieces of fat. It's just kind of one color, which is exactly what I was wanting. So real quick, I'm gonna go wash off my grinder because it's a pain in the ass if you don't do it right away, and start mixing this up. It's very important that our sausage meat is cold when we mix it. If your meat is warmed up, just throw it in the icebox for a little bit. So I'm gonna add my salt and cure, pepper and paprika mix, and I'm gonna add just a tiny bit of very cold water. That's just going to help loosen this up. Beef is actually a pretty tight protein. It's pretty dense. It's a little tighter than a lot of other proteins. Now I'm just going to mix. Uh-oh, why is this string coming into there? Keep that out. So yeah, I always wear liners underneath my gloves because my hands will warm this up and I don't want that to happen. Plus, this is 29 degrees. That's going to freeze my hands. This is much tighter than a pork sausage. I find chicken to be kind of one of the loosest of proteins. It just mixes super easy, super fast. Chicken's actually a great protein for sausage. It really has a good texture. And chicken is like the tofu of protein, so you can kind of flavor it however you want. I'm just kind of squeezing it, kneading it, flipping it. Now it's starting to get there. It's definitely starting to stick to my gloves, try to pull them off a tiny bit. It's definitely moving the bowl around, sticking to the bowl, sticking to my hand now. And if I give you the close-up shot, you can see it's like a little furry. It has these little strands reaching out. That's the proteins. That's the myosin and actin. They're reaching out, trying to grab anything they can. Like I said, it's sticking to my hand. So this is good to go. And what I'm going to do with this, just going to cover it with some plastic, put it in my fridge overnight. I'm going to let the salt and the cure start doing their thing. The cure especially needs time before these are cooked. Just let those flavors get to know each other a little better. I'll be back tomorrow morning to finish these up. My Rindswurst has been chilling out and the flavors have been all mingling, getting to know each other. Cure is starting to do its thing. Just going to load it into my stuffer. Push it down in there to get any air out. Air is the enemy of the sausage. All right, looking pretty good. Now I'm getting my casings out. I'm using 30-32 hog casings. And let's see if I can find the end. There we go, not too bad. They've been soaking overnight. I fleshed out the inside. Just got to find the opening. There it is. You know what these two fingers are good for? They're good for putting into the casing, dipping into the water. Just get some water through there. Lube up the horn with some water. And then just going to thread it on. Geez, that's a long one. Starting to wonder if it's all going to fit. I don't know if it's going to. This might be the longest casing I've ever seen. And it's really a pretty small amount of sausage I'm making too. I'm only like halfway maybe. Holy cow. I should have cut this. It's a little late to cut it now because I'll just have a super short piece if I do. Oh my goodness. Man, if you got a casing that long, it's probably better to cut it. Thing is, what I don't use, I resalt and save, and I like my casings to be as long as possible. Okay, whew. Managed to fit it all. Now I'm just going to push this out to the end. Tie a little knot. I can poke a hole at the end, just in case there's some, ouch, air in there. And we stuff. Got this handy tool, but honestly the back of a wooden spoon works pretty good too, just to get the rest out of there. So Rindswurst is a bit of a mystery to me. Some recipes make them really short, fat sausages. Seen others that make them like long, like 10-inch long lengths. We can just make these whatever we want to make them. And I'm just going to twist one in one direction, twist the next one the other direction. Twist the next one first direction. And I'm just going to keep doing that. Alternatively, we could come up one, move to the next one, just twist that one direction, go up one and pinch, skip to the next one, twist that the same direction. We can either skip one and go the same direction, or we can just do every other one the opposite direction. It's really up to you. Honestly, I usually skip and go the same direction because sometimes I lose track of which direction I'm supposed to be spinning. And when you do that, your links get unraveled. If you really want to have them all the same size, just put a mark on your tray and use that mark. I don't really care if they're the same size. Oh boy, this one has a ton of air in it. That's not good. So to deal with the air pockets in those, I just take my little sausage pricker. You could use a pin or a needle. One of those things that sticks to the end of the corn cobs. You could really use anything that's pointy and sharp, and we'll put a hole in this. Just put holes in all of them a little bit, or you can specifically just target the air pockets Really doesn't matter. No, so I use 30-32. I've seen some people recipes using like 38mm casing. So I really think the size of these is pretty subjective. The main thing is it has to be smoked and then poached. That's one thing that they all have in common, and they're all beef. If you want to make these all beef, don't use hog casings. You can use beef casings. They're harder to find. They're more expensive. Suppose you could use collagen casings. I don't mind eating hogs, so I'm using hog casings. Now I'm just going to leave these out for an hour, let them kind of come up to temperature, and I'll get them into my smoker. So after I let these sit out for an hour or so, I got my smoker preheated to about 140 degrees and just stuck these in here. For about an hour in here, they've taken on a little color, not a whole lot. You know, I think it's supposed to be pretty lightly smoked. I've seen recipes that say a half hour to an hour, depending how smoky you want it. So I'm going to take them out, go put them in that poaching water. Got my poaching water up to about 165 degrees. Going to add some salt, like if I were making pasta. I want it nice and salty. Otherwise, it'll leach the salt out of the Rindswurst, and that's not what we want. So I'm going to go get that Rindswurst out of the smoker, plop it into this water to finish cooking it. Into the water. I'll probably have to turn the heat up because that's probably going to cool it down a little bit. But I just want to keep this water around 165 for a nice gentle poach. If you have an immersion circulator, you know, one of those sous vide things, this would be a great time to use it. Pretty close, not too bad. All right, probably be about a half hour in here. These have been poaching for about a half hour. And I'm just going to put them on into this ice bath. I'm just going to leave them in there for about 5 minutes. And then I'll hang them up to dry. All right, let's give these Rindswursts a try. Let's get a look here. Oh boy, that's juicy. Definitely juicy. Oh, leaking all over the table here. Get a look in this camera here. Casing's really well bound. Looking pretty good. It's definitely a little more, it's not as bold as a lot of the sausages I make. It's just a subtle hint of smoke. Definitely got some smoke flavor in it, but it's subtle. And that poached, you know, it really changes the texture a bit when you do that poaching thing. Yeah, it's really juicy. I got juices all over my table. I mean, there's not a lot of flavors in there. It's got the pepper and paprika. That's about it. A little bit of onion comes in too. It's mild. Yep, all the flavors in here, they're all pretty mild, but they really do play pretty well together. Very beefy, very, like I said, a little kiss of smoke, a little kiss of pepper. It's a good sausage. And certainly if you don't want to eat pork, this is a good sausage to eat. Be easier to eat a few of these because the flavors are less bold. Sometimes those bold sausages, they're really delicious and you're like, flavor bomb, but they can be a little overwhelming to eat very many of them. I guess I could definitely eat a couple of these. This would be great on a sandwich with some mustard. Actually, even without a sandwich, this is some really delicious mustard. A friend of mine brought back, gave me as a gift when she came back from France. And this is a really good mustard. I really like it. And that's going to go just perfect on there. All right, I'm going to stop talking, finish this up. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're still watching this video now, you might as well subscribe so you don't miss more content like this. Put some love into the food you're making. Peace.